Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing beneath the shadow of a medieval castle just as the last grey light rains from the winter sky. Cold stone rises above you, slick with mist, while damp straw clings to your boots and smoke gathers beneath soot-black rafters beyond the gate. Somewhere across the valley, monastery bells count the hour with slow, hollow strokes. A horse stamps nearby, its breath rolling white into the air, and torchlight trembles over mud-iron hinges and tired servants hurrying indoors before darkness thickens. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. The road has left your cloak wet, your hands numb, and your dignity somewhere behind a broken cartwheel 2 miles back. You probably would not last a week out here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pass beneath the gatehouse while the guards draw the great doors inward behind you. The oak groans against iron straps, and a chain rattles above as the portcullis settles lower. For the people already inside, this sound means something simple. The outside world is being shut away for the night. Roads and every uncertainty beyond the walls remain on the other side. The inner yard is still busy, though more quietly than an hour ago. A groom leads horses toward the stable. A kitchen boy carries split wood beneath one arm. Near a covered passage, a maid shakes rain from a fur-lined cloak before taking it indoors. The castle is not asleep at all, it is merely changing rhythm. You follow that rhythm toward the residential buildings, where small windows glow behind horn panes and shutters. The stones beneath your feet hold the day's cold. Rushes lie across some interior floors mixed with dried herbs, meant to sweeten rooms where smoke, damp wool, dog's food, and too many people share the same air. Rosemary and lavender are sometimes used, though no one can quite agree whether such scents truly freshen a hall. A servant carrying beeswax candles passes carefully. Beeswax burns more cleanly than tallow and smells far better, but it costs enough that its presence tells you something about rank. In poorer rooms, smoky rushlights or tallow candles do the work. Here better candles are saved for important chambers chapel use and those whose status justifies burning money 1 inch at a time. Ahead, the remains of supper drift through an open doorway. You catch pottage, roasted onions, smoked fish, coarse bread, and ale. Wooden trenchers are being gathered from tables. Dogs nose hopefully around the edges of the hall, demonstrating an ancient confidence that all human meals eventually become canine property. Your attention moves toward the women preparing for quieter hours. A noblewoman crosses the passage with 2 attendants behind her. She wears a heavy wool gown beneath a fur-lined mantle, and although supper is finished, her day is not. Even after dusk, there are keys to account for, linens to check, servants to instruct, messages to hear, and prayers to remember. A woman of rank may supervise stores of cloth wax, spices, medicines, and preserved food while carrying the burden of family reputation in nearly every gesture. You do not yet follow her into her chamber, for now you remain among corridors and stairways as the castle settles around her. A chapel bell sounds softly. Some servants pause long enough to cross themselves. Near an alcove stands a painted image of the Virgin, its colours dim in candlelight. Someone has tucked dried herb beneath the frame. Perhaps it is devotional, perhaps it is protective, perhaps it is both. Medieval life rarely draws a sharp line between prayer, custom, and superstition. Some swear that a piece of blessed wax, a saint's token, or a scrap of written prayer carried near the body may protect a sleeper from sickness or bad dreams. A priest might disapprove of certain charms, yet the same household may keep them beside rosaries and sewing thread. If one protection is good, several apparently seem better. You climb a narrow stair worn smooth by generations of feet. Through an arrow-slit river, mist gathers beyond the wall, turning the fields silver beneath the first stars. Below, a watchman walks the parapet carrying a lantern hooded against the wind. Inside, another servant closes wooden shutters. The latch drops with a firm click. Drafts still find their way through cracks because medieval architecture has a personal grudge against warm ankles, but every barrier helps. A woman seated near a hearth extends her hands toward the coals. Her fingers are red from cold. Beside her lies a work basket containing thread, a bone needle case, and folded linen. Sewing does not always stop because daylight has gone. Clothing is valuable. Cloth is labor, and a torn sleeve is repaired rather than casually replaced. Nearby, an older attendant checks a ring of iron keys hanging from her belt. Each key belongs to a door chest, storeroom cupboard, or coffer, and possession of those keys means trust. The woman who knows what is stored where may hold more practical authority than a visiting knight with a sword and an impressive opinion of himself. The castle continues dimming around you. Kitchen fires are reduced. Leftover bread is covered. Ale vessels are moved aside. Somewhere in the stable a horse knocks once against a wooden partition. Somewhere above, wind brushes the battlements. The women begin drifting away from the noisier spaces, carrying candles into smaller rooms where night will become more private, though never entirely so. You stand in the passage watching the last flare of torchlight move across worn stone. The half-burned candle in a wall niche gutters, steadies, then burns quietly again. Beyond the shutters the road is gone beneath darkness. Within the walls another world is beginning, a world of keys, wool blankets, whispered prayers, loosened hair-guarded doors, and small, careful rituals that make a freezing castle feel for a few hours almost like home. The half-burned candle behind you throws a wavering stripe across the passage as you turn toward the great hall. Supper is ending. Not with a dramatic flourish, but with scraping benches, folded cloths, servants lifting trenchers, and the slow dispersal of people who have spent the evening eating beneath the same smoky roof. You pause near the doorway. The hall is warmer than the corridor, though only by medieval standards, which means your fingers have stopped actively complaining. A hearth still glows along one wall. Smoke drifts upward toward dark rafters, and rushes underfoot hold the mingled scents of spilled ale, damp boots, herbs, grease, and wool. Near the high table a servant gathers cups, while another folds a linen cloth with almost ceremonial care. The women do not all leave together. Rank decides nearly everything. The lady of the castle rises first, accompanied by attendants who have spent the meal standing serving, observing and waiting. Her departure is quiet, but noticed. A married noblewoman may oversee servants, linen stores, food supplies, medicines, correspondence, and sometimes estate matters when her husband is absent. Behind her come women of lesser rank, perhaps a widowed relative, a younger noblewoman, a trusted companion, or girls being fostered in the household to learn manners, household management, embroidery, music, prayer, and the endless art of behaving correctly while everyone else is watching. And everyone is watching. Privacy as you understand it is a scarce luxury here. A noblewoman may possess a chamber described as private, but private does not mean solitary. Attendants accompany her. Servants enter with water candles, clothing, bedding, or messages. Children may sleep nearby. Female relatives may share space. A chaplain might appear with devotional matters. A steward may need instructions before morning. Even silence has witnesses. You step aside as two young women pass carrying small lamps. Their wool gowns brush the rushes, and the light catches embroidered cuffs at their wrists. One whispers something to the other, earning a suppressed smile. Their amusement vanishes almost immediately when an older attendant glances toward them. Some household manuals praise modest speech and controlled laughter in women of rank. Whether anyone actually succeeds in maintaining perfect dignity through every long supper is another question entirely. No one can quite agree whether medieval etiquette created good manners or merely produced extremely talented whisperers. Lower in the hall, servants remain at work. For them the night begins later. Kitchen maids gather bowls while other servants carry leftovers towards storerooms where bread, onions, smoked fish, and ale must be accounted for. A household runs on work that becomes most visible after higher-ranking people withdraw. You follow one servant through a colder side passage. She carries scraps for the kitchen animals and ducks beneath a smoke-blackened beam without slowing. The dog from beneath the tables follows her with solemn dedication, apparently convinced that persistence is a respectable profession. The servant does not seem impressed. Farther ahead, the passage divides. One route climbs toward better chambers, another toward servants' sleeping spaces, and a third descends toward kitchens and stores. Architecture itself reinforces rank. The closer you are to the lord and lady, the more your sleeping place reflects trust, status, and usefulness. Yet even the finest chamber remains part of a working fortress. Beyond the walls, guards patrol. Within them, servants continue moving between rooms, doors open and shut. Someone carries hot water upstairs, someone else removes ashes from a brazier. Somewhere a child refuses to settle, while somewhere else an exhausted maid could probably sleep through the second coming if given a sufficiently warm blanket. A chapel bell sounds again. The tone passes faintly through stone. Several women crossing the passage pause and bow their heads. Evening prayer is not always performed in exactly the same way throughout every household, but devotion structures the hours. Bells from a castle chapel or nearby monastery help mark a night that otherwise has no clocks, glowing conveniently beside the bed. A young attendant touches a small pendant beneath her gown. It might contain a tiny cross, a saint's image, or perhaps something believed to offer protection. Pilgrim badges and devotional tokens sometimes find their way into household life long after a journey ends. Some swear that objects touched to holy relics retain a special blessing. Others remain skeptical, though skepticism becomes rather flexible when darkness deepens and the wind begins making strange noises in the chimney. You pass an alcove where a small lamp burns before a saint's image. The women moving toward their rooms cross themselves almost automatically. Then the social order becomes quieter, but no less precise. The lady's attendants accompany her upstairs. A trusted chamber woman may remain close enough to help with clothing and valuables later. Younger women may be directed toward adjoining rooms. Servants who are no longer required disappear toward their own beds, sometimes shared, sometimes little more than pallets laid out wherever space permits. A woman's place at night depends on who she is, whom she serves, whom she is related to, and how much the household trusts her. The great hall behind you empties further. Benches stand bare now, the high table is cleared. One servant sweeps scattered rushes away from the hearth, while another checks that no dangerous spark has fallen into dry material. Fire is comfort, cook light, and constant threat. In a building filled with timber roofs, cloth hangings, straw mattresses, wooden chests, and candles, one careless flame can turn a peaceful night into disaster. So flames are watched carefully. You glance back once. The hall that had seemed crowded and public only a short while ago now feels enormous. Without conversation, its stone walls absorb the crackle of the hearth. Shadows stretch where noble women had sat. Cups are gone. Dogs have migrated toward the kitchens. The evening world of ceremony is dissolving. Ahead, the women vanish one by one through oak doors. This is where public life gives way to something more intimate, though never fully private. Behind those doors wait combs, basins, prayer books, keys, blankets, whispered conversations, and all the small habits that rarely appear in chronicles of kings and battles. You climb after them slowly, hearing the monastery bell fade across the mist outside, while wet wool, beeswax, and wood smoke follow you up the stair. You reach the upper landing, just as an attendant pushes open a heavy oak door and warmer air slips into the passage, carrying the faint scents of beeswax, dried lavender, and wool. The chamber beyond is not warm in any modern sense, but after the stairwell it feels almost generous. A small fire settles in the hearth. 2 candles burn on a chest. Thick hangings soften the stone walls, and a narrow window has already been shuttered against the wind. You enter quietly behind the women. This is the ladies' chamber, a place often described as private, though privacy here means that fewer people are present, not that anyone is truly alone. A trusted attendant stands near the bed. Another woman brings a basin. A younger servant kneels beside a coffer, waiting for instructions. The lady removes her mantle first. The fur lining is damp at the hem from the evening air, and an attendant takes it carefully, rather than tossing it over a chair. Clothing is wealth. Good wool, fine linen, fur, silk embroidery, and metal fastenings may represent months or years of labor. You watch as the mantle is hung where it can dry. Next come smaller pieces, a belt with metal fittings, a brooch, perhaps a chain rings and pins. Each object receives attention. A jewel can be portable wealth, a family possession, a diplomatic gift, a devotional object, or a convenient source of money in difficult times. One attendant opens a wooden coffer reinforced with iron bands. The key comes from the lady's own ring. Keys are signs of authority in a medieval household. The person who controls a chest controls what is inside it, whether linen, silver letters, spices, coins, or jewelry. A noblewoman may wear important keys at her belt during the day and keep them close at night. Losing one can become a household drama involving suspicion and blame. The jewelry disappears into the coffer. The lid closes. The iron lock clicks. You hear the sound clearly because the room has grown quiet. At the bedside stands a large bed, surrounded by curtains. Its frame is substantial, and the mattress may be stuffed with wool feathers or other soft material, depending on wealth and circumstance. Blankets lie folded above it. A fur cover has been added against the cold. Bed curtains do more than create a sense of privacy. They help trap warmth around the sleeper, which is valuable when the stone walls seem determined to refrigerate everyone equally. A servant checks the curtains for drafts. Another adjusts the brazier. No one can quite agree whether certain medieval households warmed beds with heated stones, pans, or bricks as regularly as later generations did, but people certainly use practical means to fight the cold when they can. Warm objects wrapped in cloth, extra blankets, shared beds, and heavy curtains all help. The lady sits on a low stool. An attendant loosens the outer gown. Layers matter at night as much as during the day. Beneath the heavier garments are linen pieces worn closer to the skin. The exact arrangement varies with place, period, rank, and fashion, but the principle remains simple. Dress is layered, expensive, and inconvenient enough that assistance is often welcome. You stand near the hearth while the gown is lifted away and folded. There is no casual heap of clothes on the floor. A maid brushes dust from the fabric, checks the hem and lays it over a chest. Medieval laundry is laborious. Linen can be washed more often than heavy wool garments, and the cleanliness of the body often depends partly on changing or washing the linen closest to the skin. The lady rubs her hands before the fire. Her fingers look pale in the candlelight. An attendant offers a small cloth scented faintly with herbs. Lavender, rosemary, rosewater, and other aromatic materials can appear in wealthy households, though availability depends on region and season. Pleasant scent is valued especially in rooms where fire smoke, damp textiles, bodies, and old rushes compete enthusiastically for attention. Some swear that certain herbs do more than smell pleasant. Lavender may calm the mind. Rue may guard against misfortune. Mugwort placed nearby is sometimes associated with protection dreams or travel. Beliefs overlap with medicine, religion, and custom so thoroughly that separating one from another can be nearly impossible. On a small table you notice a devotional book. Its pages are expensive parchment and its painted initials catch the candlelight. A woman of wealth may own a book of hours or another personal prayer book, though literacy varies. Even when she reads, devotion may also be spoken aloud, memorized, or guided by a chaplain. For now the book remains closed. The room still needs preparing. A servant checks the shutters and presses one tighter against the frame. Another places a pottery vessel where it can be reached in the night. A small jug of water stands nearby. The candles are moved away from hanging cloth. Fire and fabric are never ideal neighbors. The dog you saw downstairs appears suddenly at the doorway. No one seems certain who allowed him upstairs. He sits with complete confidence. The older attendant points toward the passage. The dog considers the command, decides medieval hierarchy does not apply to him, and lies down. For a moment, the chamber feels less like the private room of someone important and more like any household preparing for sleep. The final outer garments are folded, jewelry is locked away, keys are placed close at hand. A fur-lined robe remains ready in case the lady must rise during the night. The hearth is reduced, but not extinguished entirely. One candle is left burning, while another is snuffed beneath a small metal cap, releasing a curl of smoke. You hear the wind press softly against the shutters. Far below, a gate chain rattles. The castle is closing itself inward. The lady glances toward the bed, but she is not ready to sleep yet. Her hair remains pinned and covered the day, still held in place by combs, ribbons, and careful arrangement. Before she can settle beneath the blankets, all of that must be undone. You move closer to the candlelight as the attendant reaches for the first pin. The first pin comes free with a faint, metallic click. You watch the attendant place it carefully in a shallow wooden dish beside the candle. Another follows, then another, each one releasing a little more of the day's careful arrangement. The lady remains seated on the low stool near the hearth while her attendant works slowly, because hair pinned beneath veils, caps, and headdresses is not something to attack impatiently unless you enjoy beginning a small domestic war just before bedtime. A linen veil is loosened first. Its edge has been secured beneath the chin and around the temples, depending on fashion and circumstance, and when it is lifted away, the lady's hair is still partly bound beneath it. For much of medieval Europe, married women of respectable status commonly cover their hair in public, though customs vary widely across regions and centuries. Hair can be associated with beauty, sexuality, modesty, age rank, and marital status, which gives a simple piece of linen considerably more social responsibility than seems fair. The veil is folded rather than dropped. A younger servant takes it and places it inside a chest with other linens. You notice that she checks the cloth for stains and loose threads before putting it away. Fine linen requires work. Flax must be grown, harvested, processed, spun, woven, bleached, cut, sewn, washed, and maintained. Even a plain-looking veil represents many hours of labor. The lady's attendant reaches for another pin. This one has a decorative head, perhaps of brass or silver. It joins the others in the dish. Her hair finally loosens over her shoulders. For a moment, the transformation is striking. The woman who sat upright beneath formal layers at supper now looks less ceremonial, less distant, and more ordinary. The castle has not changed, but the removal of a few pins has somehow made the room feel smaller and quieter. The attendant picks up a comb. It is made of bone, polished smooth from long use. Other combs might be carved from wood horn, ivory, or precious materials in wealthy households. Some are double-sided, with wider teeth on one edge and much finer teeth on the other. Those fine teeth have a practical enemy, lice. You lean slightly closer, though perhaps not too close. Personal grooming includes regular inspection for parasites, and combing is one of the simplest defenses available. Medieval people are not unaware of dirt or infestation. They wash, change linen, delouse clothing, comb hair, use herbs, and complain about vermin with the same weary irritation people have always reserved for creatures that refuse to pay rent. The attendant begins at the ends of the lady's hair. She works upward slowly, easing out knots rather than dragging through them. A little scented oil may be rubbed between the fingers. Recipes vary, but rosewater herbs, oils, vinegar preparations, and aromatic mixtures appear in medieval household and medical traditions. The hair catches the firelight. The room fills with the soft sound of the comb moving through it. Outside, wind presses at the shutters. You hear a distant bell. The monastery is marking another hour, though you cannot see the tower through the dark. Hair care has its own collection of beliefs. Some swear that cutting hair at the wrong phase of the moon affects how quickly it grows. Others believe certain herbs strengthen the hair or prevent it from falling. Walnut preparations, sage, rosemary, and other plants find their way into cosmetic and medicinal recipes. No one can quite agree whether these remedies work as promised, but confidence has never required evidence to be perfectly comfortable. The older attendant examines the lady's scalp carefully. If she finds anything unwelcome, the fine-toothed comb is used again. The dog remains near the door. He watches this procedure with mild concern, perhaps sensing that anyone capable of inspecting another creature for fleas may eventually turn toward him. He decides to move several feet farther away. The younger servant suppresses a smile. The lady notices. So does the older attendant. Nobody says anything. That silence seems to contain an entire comedy. The combing continues. Loose strands are gathered rather than discarded carelessly. Hair can sometimes be reused in small household ways, and in folklore it may carry more mysterious significance. Some people fear that discarded hair can be used in charms or harmful magic if it falls into the wrong hands. A prudent woman might, therefore, burn loose hair or dispose of it carefully. Some swear witches can work mischief with a clipped lock. Others insist this is foolishness. Even now it is hard to tell whether such habits arise from genuine fear, local custom, or simply the ancient human suspicion that anything attached to your head probably deserves special treatment after removal. The attendant gathers the loose strands from the comb. She drops them into the fire. They curl instantly and vanish. A sharp smell rises for a moment. The dog sneezes. This earns him a disapproving glance, although he appears to feel entirely justified. The lady's hair is divided loosely for the night. Depending on custom, she may braid it or leave it arranged in a way that prevents tangling while she sleeps. Long hair requires maintenance, and sleeping on it carelessly only creates more work the following morning. A simple braid begins. The attendant separates the strands. Her hands move with practiced ease, one over another, then again. The repetitive motion is almost hypnotic. You notice a small ribbon resting beside the pins. It is tied near the end of the braid, not for display, but to keep the hair secure. The formal veil from supper is gone. In its place, a lighter covering may eventually be worn depending on habit and comfort. Nightcaps and linen coverings can help keep hair controlled and offer a little warmth in a chamber where winter air creeps beneath doors without invitation. The servant gathers the remaining pins and counts them. One appears to be missing. For several quiet moments everyone searches the floor. A candle is lowered. The younger servant checks beneath the stool. The older attendant looks beside the chest. The lady waits. At last, the missing pin is discovered caught in the rushes. It is lifted triumphantly as though a siege has been broken. Small objects are precious enough to deserve finding. The pin joins the others. The veil is safely folded. The comb is wiped and returned to its case. The lady touches the finished braid, once testing its tightness. Beyond the shutters, darkness lies over the river and fields. Inside, the candle has burned lower. The public face of the day has been dismantled, piece by piece mantle, jewels, veil pins, and finally the elaborate arrangement of hair. Now only the quieter routines remain. On the table beside the hearth, a basin waits with water that has already begun to cool. The basin beside the hearth gives off only the faintest trace of warmth now. You move closer as the younger servant lifts it with both hands and places it on a low table. The water inside trembles against the metal rim, reflecting candlelight in thin golden ripples. Beside it rests a folded linen cloth, a small jug, a shallow dish containing something fragrant, and another cloth that has clearly been washed so many times its edges have begun to soften. This is not a bath. It is simply the practical washing that comes before sleep. The lady dips her fingers into the water and immediately pulls them back. Cold. Of course it is. The older attendant pours in a little warmer water from the jug, though not enough to make the basin luxurious. Heating water requires fuel servants, vessels, time and patience, all of which tend to become less available after dark. A wealthy household can manage more comfort than a poor cottage, but even here, the evening wash is often modest. You watch as the lady moistens the linen cloth. She wipes her hands first, then her face. The motion is slow and methodical, removing traces of smoke-dust food and the day's work. Medieval cleanliness is far more complicated than the old notion that everyone simply avoids water for several centuries. People wash hands before and after meals, wash faces, bathe when practical visit bathhouses in some towns, change linen, comb hair, and use scented preparations. The problem is convenience. A stone castle in winter is not exactly designed around hot showers. You would have discovered this approximately 3 minutes after arriving. The lady wipes around her neck and behind her ears. An attendant offers a small amount of scented water. Rose water is particularly valued in wealthier households, though other herbal waters may be used. Lavender, sage, rosemary, mint, and local plants appear in recipes for washing, scenting, or treating the skin. Some preparations are medicinal. Some are cosmetic. Some are probably optimistic. No one can quite agree whether every household recipe works, but medieval medicine has never suffered from a shortage of confidence. The lady examines her hands near the candle. Her skin is dry from winter air. An ointment is brought from a small covered pot. It may contain animal fat oil, beeswax herbs, or other ingredients depending on the recipe. Richer preparations sometimes include imported substances that have traveled through markets and merchant networks before arriving in a chamber like this one. She rubs a little into her fingers. You smell beeswax and something herbal. The fire pops softly. A servant adds one small piece of wood, then immediately seems to regret how generous she has been. Fuel costs money. Warmth is rationed by common sense. The basin is moved aside and another small cloth appears. Now attention turns to the mouth. Medieval dental care is less pleasant than modern dentistry, but it is not non-existent. People use tooth powders, cloths, chewing sticks, herbal mixtures, and sometimes preparations involving salt or crushed materials. Bad breath is noticed. Toothache is certainly noticed. A woman might rub her teeth and gums with a cloth or use a powder scented with herbs. The lady does this now gently. You are relieved to see no enthusiastic medieval surgeon arriving with pliers. That would rather spoil the bedtime atmosphere. The older attendant opens a small container containing a powdered mixture. Its exact contents are difficult to know. Recipes from medieval medical texts mention combinations involving herbs, salt, spices, wine, vinegar, or abrasive substances. Some probably help somewhat. Others may do more harm than good. Some swear that sage strengthens the teeth. Others recommend rinsing with wine. Wine conveniently is also recommended for enough unrelated problems that one suspects medieval physicians occasionally understood morale better than medicine. The lady rinses her mouth. She spits discreetly into the basin. There is no embarrassment in the practical act. A private chamber is a working room as much as a retreat. Nearby waits another unavoidable feature of medieval nighttime life. The chamber pot. It sits partly concealed behind a curtain and looks deeply unimpressed with its role in history. Castles may have garderobes built into walls, sometimes with openings leading down shafts, but walking through freezing corridors at night is not always desirable. Chamber pots provide an easier solution. Servants empty and clean them later, a duty that never appears in romantic songs about courtly love. You glance toward the shuttered window. The wind has strengthened. Even the idea of leaving this chamber for a cold latrine seems unreasonable. Privacy remains limited. An attendant may stay nearby while the lady uses washing facilities or changes clothing. Social boundaries differ from modern expectations, and elite women are accustomed to being served in intimate routines. The body is private, but never entirely unattended. The younger servant replaces the water jug. She sets a clean linen towel beside the basin. Linen touching the skin is important because it absorbs sweat and oil. Changing undergarments and washing linen can contribute greatly to cleanliness, particularly when outer wool clothing is washed less frequently. The lady removes the last traces of moisture from her hands. Then she reaches for a small sachet. It contains dried herbs, perhaps lavender, perhaps rosemary. The scent is faint, but pleasant. Such herbs may be kept among clothing or bedding to freshen them. They may also be associated with protection from insects or illness. Whether they reliably repel fleas is another matter. Some swear that pennyroyal wormwood or tansy discourages vermin. The fleas, unfortunately, do not appear to have read the same advice. An attendant checks the bed curtains again. She brushes the linen with quick, practiced strokes. Cleanliness at night is partly about the body and partly about controlling the environment. Bedding is aired when possible. Mattresses may be beaten, rushes are replaced, herbs are scattered, clothing is brushed. Fleas and lice remain persistent companions, but people do not welcome them. The lady notices a faint redness on one wrist. Immediately, the older woman inspects it. A bite, perhaps, or irritation from wool. She applies a dab of ointment. Some household remedies use plantain chamomile, honey fat or other familiar ingredients for irritated skin. A medical text might prescribe something far more elaborate, but household knowledge tends to favor what is available in the garden pantry or nearby fields. Outside, the monastery bell sounds again. The water in the basin is completely cold now. The younger servant carries it away. The chamber feels cleaner somehow, though the smell of smoke remains in the curtains and stone. The lady's face is bare, her hands are washed, her hair is braided, her jewelry is locked away. The preparations of appearance have slowly given way to preparations of comfort, yet one small chest remains unopened near the hearth. The older attendant kneels beside it and takes out bundles of dried herbs, cloth packets, and tiny pots. The ordinary aches and illnesses of the night are about to receive their turn. The older attendant opens the little chest beside the hearth, and a dry, earthy smell rises into the room. You lean closer. Inside are cloth packets tied with thread stoppered jars, folded scraps of linen, a horn spoon, a small stone mortar, and bundles of herbs that have faded from summer green to winter brown. Some were gathered from the castle garden months ago. Others may have come from a market, a monastery infirmary, or a travelling seller whose confidence in his remedies was probably stronger than the remedies themselves. The attendant selects a bundle of dried chamomile. She crumbles a little between her fingers, the lady's wrist still irritated from whatever bit or rubbed against it earlier receives another inspection. A simple salve is prepared from something already softened near the fire, perhaps fat or oil, thickened with beeswax and mixed with herbs. Household medicine often begins not with a physician, but with whatever experienced women already know. That knowledge matters. A noble household may summon trained medical practitioners when illness becomes serious, yet daily aches are frequently handled inside the chamber. Women learn which herbs soothe skin, which teas settle a stomach, which poultices are placed against swelling, and which recipes have been passed from mother to daughter, servant to mistress, or neighbor to neighbor. You watch the attendant stir the salve with the tip of the horn spoon. She spreads a little across the reddened skin. The lady flexes her hand. Apparently it does not sting. That is already a promising result by medieval medical standards. Near the chest lies a small cloth bag containing dried mint. Another holds fennel seeds. There is sage, too, and perhaps, rue though you resist pretending, you can identify every brittle leaf in candlelight. Herbs are valuable because they are familiar, portable, and versatile. The same plant might season food scent, linen, flavor, ale, soothe digestion, appear in a religious association, and frighten away something supernatural before breakfast. Medieval efficiency can be impressive. The attendant pours a little hot water into a cup. A few leaves go in. Not every castle has endless access to imported spices, and even wealthy households depend heavily on local plants. Honey may sweeten certain mixtures when available. Wine or ale might also serve as a base for remedies, especially when medical writers recommend steeping herbs in them. The lady takes the cup. Steam touches her face. You smell mint and something bitter. Her expression suggests that the bitterness has won. She drinks anyway. People endure unpleasant medicines because discomfort is ordinary. Headaches, toothaches, sore joints, digestive troubles, skin problems, coughs, menstrual pain and sleeplessness all belong to life in rooms that are smoky, drafty, and only imperfectly clean. The cold does not help. The lady shifts closer to the hearth and rubs one shoulder. The attendant notices immediately. A warming cloth is prepared. A piece of linen is held near the fire, never close enough to scorch, then folded and pressed gently against the aching place. Heat is among the simplest remedies, requiring no rare herb and no explanation involving the movement of planets, although naturally people sometimes provide one anyway. Medical theory in much of medieval Europe is influenced by ideas about the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health is often understood as a matter of balance, with food, seasons, age, climate, and temperament affecting the body. If the balance seems wrong, treatments might include changes in diet, herbal preparations, purging, or bloodletting. You glance at the small instrument case tucked into one corner of the chest. Thankfully, nobody reaches for it. Leeches can be used medicinally, and bloodletting is common enough to be familiar, though exactly when, why, and how often it is done varies enormously. A trained practitioner may consider the patient's condition, season, and other factors. Some calendars even mark favorable or unfavorable times for such treatments. No one can quite agree whether every healer follows such guidance carefully, but the stars receive more responsibility for human digestion than you might expect. The lady's shoulder relaxes under the warmed cloth. The attendant now takes out a tiny packet containing a powdered substance. This one is not used. Instead, she checks its label or perhaps a small mark indicating what it contains, then returns it to the chest. Many remedies are too valuable to waste casually, especially those involving imported spices such as cloves, cinnamon, or nutmeg. Medicine and luxury often share the same cupboard. A second woman in the chamber complains quietly of a headache. The older attendant does not seem surprised. She rubs her temples with scented oil, perhaps rosemary, perhaps lavender. The room has become a gentle cloud of smoke, herbs, wax, and warm wool. You begin to understand why evening medicine is not always a dramatic event. Most of it is small: a salve, a warm cloth, a bitter drink, a rubbed temple, a checked bruise, a whispered question about whether a cough has improved since morning. Yet, alongside these practical habits live stranger protections. From the bottom of the chest, the attendant lifts a tiny pouch. Inside may be a written charm, a bit of thread, a dried plant, or an object associated with a saint. Remedies can cross easily into belief. Certain words may be written and carried. Specific plants may be gathered on particular feast days. An amulet may be worn beside a cross. Some swear that a sprig of mugwort protects travellers and eases weariness. Others claim vervain has unusual powers when gathered correctly. Those who tell such traditions never fully agree about the details, which is convenient, because disagreement allows every village to remain completely certain that its version is the correct one. The lady touches the pouch briefly, then it is returned to the chest. For sleep herbs such as lavender or chamomile may be favoured for their scent and calming reputation. A sachet can be tucked near bedding, warm drinks may be offered. Someone troubled by repeated nightmares might rely as much on prayer or protective objects as on anything medicinal. But the prayers themselves have not begun yet, for now the chamber remains practical. The attendant replaces the jars one by one. The mortar is wiped clean. The spoon is wrapped. The warmed cloth is removed from the lady's shoulder. Outside, the wind continues along the walls, but here the little fire has held. You notice how carefully the chest is closed. Medicines are resources. Some are expensive, some are dangerous in the wrong amount. Some are merely unpleasant enough that theft seems unlikely. The iron clasp drops into place. The lady keeps the final cup in both hands for a little longer, absorbing its warmth before setting it down. Her wrist has been salved. Her shoulder has eased. The headache across the room is apparently fading. The castle has provided no miracle, only a collection of small comforts accumulated across generations. Then the bell sounds again. This time the women become still. The older attendant turns toward the devotional book, waiting beside the candle. The devotional book opens with a soft crackle of parchment. You watch the older attendant turn the first page carefully, keeping her fingers away from the painted border. Candlelight gathers on small patches of gold leaf and makes them shine far more brightly than anything else in the chamber. The figures painted there are tiny saints' angels, perhaps the Virgin, seated beneath a blue canopy. Their faces are calm in the way only painted saints seem able to manage, while everyone around them is cold, tired, and worried about tomorrow. The lady shifts from her stool. A cushion is placed near the bedside. She kneels. The other women follow. You do the same, lowering yourself beside the hearth while the fire settles into red coals behind you. Prayer marks the end of the day as firmly as the closing of the gates. For women living in a medieval castle, devotion is not limited to Sundays or feast days. The religious calendar shapes work meals, fasts, celebrations, childbirth, mourning, travel, illness, and sleep. Monastery bells sounding beyond the walls reinforce that rhythm, calling religious communities to the canonical hours and reminding lay households that time itself belongs to a sacred order. The bell you heard a moment ago fades into the winter distance. The lady begins with familiar words. Some prayers are read from the page, others require no book at all. The women have repeated them often enough that they move through the room from memory low and steady the way a lullaby does when no one remembers first learning it. You notice a string of prayer beads looped through one woman's fingers. Long before the rosary takes its later standardized form, Christians use strings of beads or knotted cords to count repeated prayers. Wealthier people may own beads of amber, coral, jet bone wood, or precious materials. This set is dark and polished. The woman moves one bead beneath her thumb, then another. The quiet repetition changes the atmosphere of the chamber. A few minutes ago there were ointments, aching shoulders, and jokes hidden behind obedient faces. Now everything slows. The lady prays for members of her household, for absent relatives, for those traveling along winter roads, for people who are ill, perhaps for a husband staying in another manor or a son serving elsewhere, perhaps for the dead. The dead remain close in medieval imagination. Their names may be spoken in prayers long after burial. Masses can be requested for their souls. Wealthy families endow chapels or provide money, so priests will continue praying after those who paid for the prayers have joined the people being prayed for. It is a rather efficient attempt to organize eternity. You lower your eyes toward the rush-covered floor. A faint scent of rosemary rises where someone has stepped on a dried sprig. Beside the bed hangs a small cross. Near it is another object, wrapped in cloth. The younger servant glances toward it. You have already seen how easily practical medicine, religious devotion, and household belief overlap, and here the boundaries become even less distinct. The cloth is opened. Inside rests a tiny reliquary. It may contain a fragment claimed to belong to a saint, a scrap of cloth associated with a shrine, or some other blessed object. Great churches preserve famous relics behind silver and gold, but small devotional items also travel in private hands. Pilgrims bring back badges from shrines. They carry ampullae containing water or oil. They touch objects to holy places. Some swear that even contact with a respected relic allows a blessing to pass into another object. No one can quite agree whether every relic circulating through medieval Europe is genuine. Indeed, even medieval people sometimes have doubts. If every church possessing a fragment of one particular saint were correct, certain saints would have needed a surprisingly generous number of fingers. Still, doubt does not entirely erase devotion. The lady touches the reliquary gently. The gesture is neither theatrical nor fearful. It is habitual. She asks protection through the night. Protection from sickness, from sudden death, from fire, from malicious spirits, from bad dreams, from whatever may lurk in darkness beyond human understanding. Night has always made ordinary worries larger. In a castle without electric light, darkness arrives completely. Corridors become pools of black stone between candles. Outside the shutters are forests, fields, roads, and villages that vanish from sight. A strange sound can be wind, or an animal, or a loose shutter. or something the servants will spend tomorrow insisting was definitely not a loose shutter. Some swear that particular prayers said before sleeping guard the soul until morning. Others keep written holy words close to the bed. A small scrap of parchment may bear a prayer, sacred name, or biblical phrase. To modern eyes, this can resemble a charm, yet the person carrying it may consider it entirely Christian. Church authorities sometimes condemn magical practices while approving relics, blessings, and prayers. Ordinary households navigate the difference in their own way. You notice a little branch tied near the shutter. Perhaps it was placed there for scent, perhaps for protection. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. The devotional book moves into another pair of hands. The younger woman cannot read every word fluently, so the older attendant guides her quietly. Literacy among noble women varies greatly. Some women read well and commission books. Others know enough for devotional purposes. Some rely on memorized prayer clergy or literate companions. The illuminated pages themselves also teach. Pictures of saints, biblical scenes, and symbols give the eye something to follow, even when the Latin text remains difficult. The candle flame trembles. A draught has found the room. Everyone feels it at once. The lady draws her robe closer. Prayer continues. The women remember the Virgin, whose protection is especially important in female devotion. Certain saints may be called upon for particular troubles, illnesses, childbirth, travel, or other dangers. A woman may develop special attachment to a local saint or one associated with her family. A saint's feast day can shape memory almost like a birthday. Events are recalled as happening near St. Martin's Day, after Michaelmas before Candlemas, or around another religious marker. The calendar is populated by holy people. So is the night. One attendant makes the sign of the cross more carefully than before. Perhaps she has heard something in the passage. You listen. There is only the castle settling, timbers shift, wind sighs through a gap in the stone. The dog raises his head, everyone pauses, nothing happens. The dog lowers his head again, thereby delivering what may be the evening's most reliable theological judgment. The lady closes her eyes. The final prayers become softer. A short petition is made for peaceful rest and safe waking. For people in this world, waking tomorrow is not treated as something entirely guaranteed. Illness can turn quickly. Winter can be harsh. Fire can spread. Childbirth can become dangerous. Travelers can disappear on roads. That reality gives evening prayers a weight deeper than routine. Yet the mood in the chamber is not grim. It is reassuring. The same words have been spoken by mothers, daughters, servants, widows, and girls in countless rooms before this one. They provide order, a beginning to sleep, a sense that the night has been properly entrusted to someone greater than the household. The lady rises. One attendant helps her from the cushion. The prayer beads are placed beside the bed. The reliquary is wrapped again. The devotional book closes. A ribbon marks the page for morning. Then the women remain still for just a moment longer. Outside, another gust moves over the battlements. Far beyond the walls the monastery bell has gone silent. The night belongs now to candles, watchmen, sleeping animals, and the handful of servants who still have work to do. One of those servants steps toward the bed. She reaches for the blankets. The prayers are finished. Now the bedchamber itself must be made ready. The servant reaches for the blankets with both hands and lifts them away from the mattress. A cloud of dust rises into the candlelight. You lean back. The dog does the same. Perhaps he has learned something useful after all. The bed is too important to be treated casually. In a wealthy chamber, it may be one of the most valuable objects in the room, built from heavy timber, hung with curtains, piled with mattresses and coverings, and designed to provide warmth, status, and a little separation from the rest of the household. The servant smooths the mattress beneath. Depending on wealth, place, and period, bedding may be stuffed with wool, feathers, straw, or combinations of them. A fine feather bed is expensive, while poorer sleepers may have little more than straw-filled sacks. Another servant enters carrying a narrow wooden beater and gives the bedding several firm strokes. Dust rises again. More importantly, the beating helps loosen anything living where it should not be. Fleas are persistent visitors. Bedbugs can also be a problem, and lice do not politely restrict themselves to hair. Bedding clothing rushes animals, and crowded rooms give parasites plenty of opportunity. People try to fight them. Mattresses are aired when weather allows, blankets are shaken, linen is washed, straw is replaced, herbs are tucked among bedding. Some swear that wormwood, pennyroyal tansy, or lavender discourages fleas. The fleas, having no respect for herbal theory, occasionally disagree. The older attendant watches while the servant checks seams and folds. A candle is held near enough to provide light, but far enough from the curtains to avoid creating the far greater problem of a burning chamber. Fire is always close to everyone's mind. The curtains hang from the wooden bed frame in thick folds. They provide privacy, but tonight their greater purpose is warmth. Once drawn, they trap some body heat and reduce the movement of cold air. The servant runs her hand along the fabric. No damp patch. Good. Dampness is the quiet enemy of castle comfort. Stone walls hold cold. Rain finds weaknesses. Winter air slips through shutters. Wool and linen can feel clammy after days of bad weather. Even a grand chamber may smell faintly of moisture. You glance toward the hearth. The fire has dropped low. A younger servant kneels beside it, draws the coals together with an iron poker, and places a small split log across them. Flame catches slowly, throwing a warmer glow over the rush-covered floor. Fuel is not wasted. The intention is not to make the chamber hot. That would be ambitious. The intention is merely to stop it becoming indistinguishable from the courtyard. A metal brazier stands well away from the bed. Braziers provide extra warmth, though experience teaches caution around them. The servant opens the bed curtains. A folded linen sheet lies beneath. She touches it. Cold. Naturally. The lady looks at the linen, the servant looks at the lady. Nothing is said. Everyone understands that climbing into freezing bedding is one of civilization's less celebrated tests of character. A warmed object is brought from beside the hearth, wrapped carefully in cloth. Heated stones, bricks, or warming pans are used in different times and places to take the edge from icy bedding. No one can quite agree whether every castle household relies on the same method. The wrapped warmth is passed slowly beneath the covers. The servant moves it from one side to the other. Meanwhile, another attendant checks the lower edge of the curtains. A loosened tie is discovered. Needle and thread appear. 3 quick stitches secure it. Nothing useful is discarded merely because it becomes inconvenient. Beside the bed, soft slippers are placed within reach. A fur-lined robe is arranged over a nearby chest. If the lady must rise in darkness, she will not want to search a freezing room for warm clothing. The chamber pot is shifted closer as well. It may be the least romantic object in the room, but in the middle of a winter night, it could easily be the most appreciated. A jug and cup are placed on the table. Another candle is trimmed. Beeswax candles are valuable, so their burning is managed carefully. One left too long wastes wax. One placed badly risks fire. One extinguished too early leaves somebody stumbling into furniture. The older attendant checks the oak door. The iron latch works smoothly. A bar rests nearby. She examines the shutters again and presses a hand against the join where cold air creeps through. A strip of folded cloth is pushed into the worst gap. The draught weakens. It is not elegant, it works. From deeper in the castle comes a bucket descending a stair, then a broom brushing stone. Ashes are banked, water carried, animals checked, and doors secured. Servants create the quiet into which everyone else eventually disappears. Here the bed is almost ready. Blankets lie in layer, linen near the body, wool above, fur added where wealth permits and winter demands it. Some sleepers keep extra garments or caps on through the night because the room itself offers little mercy. The dog rises and approaches the bed. He sniffs the blankets. The older attendant points toward the doorway. He sighs deeply, apparently feeling personally betrayed by the feudal system, and returns to his place near the hearth. The final curtain is drawn halfway. The lady tests the mattress with one hand. It is warmer now. The room has been checked, swept, secured, and softened against the cold. Yet, as you look around, you understand how much labor hides behind something as simple as going to bed. Someone cuts the wood, someone carries it, someone washes the linen, someone mends the curtains, someone empties the chamber pot, someone shakes the mattress, someone trims the candle, someone wakes before dawn to begin again. The lady may sleep in the finest bed in the castle, but comfort rests on many tired hands. The servants step back. For a moment the chamber seems peaceful. Then you notice that not everyone is leaving. One attendant remains beside the hearth. Another settles a stool near the wall. A pallet is unrolled in the adjoining space. The private bedchamber, it seems, is about to reveal just how little privacy the night truly provides. The pallet unrolls with a soft rustle against the rush-covered floor. You watch the younger attendant spread a wool blanket over it, then place a folded cloak at one end for a pillow. It is not luxurious, but it is close to the lady's bed, close to the hearth, and most importantly, close enough that she can be summoned with a whisper. This is where the idea of a private medieval bedchamber begins to unravel. The room belongs to the lady. Her bed dominates it. Her coffers stand against the walls. Her devotional book rests beside the candle. Her keys are within reach, yet she does not necessarily sleep alone. An attendant may remain in the room throughout the night. Another servant might sleep just beyond an inner door. A child may share the chamber. A visiting female relative may be given space nearby. In some circumstances, trusted companions or waiting women remain close enough to respond immediately if their mistress wakes ill, frightened, cold, or simply in need of water. Privacy exists. Solitude is another matter. You settle near the wall while the older attendant checks the chamber one more time. The lady sits at the edge of the bed. Her braid lies over one shoulder. The room feels far removed from the great hall now, yet the household remains present in every object and every person. Even a noblewoman at night is surrounded by service. That service is partly practical. Candles must be watched, fires must be tended, a chamber pot may need emptying, messages might arrive after dark. A sick child may require attention. The lady herself might wake with fever or pain. In a world where calling for help cannot be done by pressing a button, keeping another human being within shouting distance is remarkably useful. You hear movement in the adjoining room. Two women are preparing another pallet. One laughs quietly, then lowers her voice. Walls are thick, but doors are not always soundproof, and discretion matters in a household where reputation can travel faster than any horse. The phrase private conversation becomes rather optimistic when 3 servants are sleeping within 12 feet of it. No one can quite agree how consistently noble households arrange sleeping spaces because customs vary with architecture, wealth, family structure, and circumstance. Some castles offer suites of connected rooms. Others force people into whatever arrangement available space allows. A chamber might be reserved for a woman of high rank, yet nearby rooms can remain crowded. Winter makes crowding more attractive. Bodies produce warmth. A room containing several sleepers is easier to endure than an empty stone chamber. Warmth has a way of making strict ideas about personal space surprisingly flexible. The younger attendant finishes her pallet. She removes her outer gown, keeping a simpler layer beneath, and folds the garment neatly beside her. Her shoes are placed together. Nothing is scattered carelessly. Finding one shoe in darkness while the castle is freezing is apparently a lesson people learn only once. She sits and begins rubbing her feet. Hours of standing in the great hall have left them sore. The lady notices and says something quietly. The attendant smiles. You cannot make out the words, but the exchange feels familiar rather than ceremonial. Relationships between noblewomen and female attendants can be complicated. There is hierarchy, certainly, but also long familiarity. A chamber attendant may know her mistress's illnesses, fears, habits, pregnancies, family, disputes, preferences, and moods better than many people of equal rank do. That knowledge creates trust. It can also create danger. Secrets heard at night do not cease to be secrets simply because the listener is a servant. A woman trusted inside a private chamber holds invisible power. She may know which letters arrive, who visits, who cries, who argues, who sleeps poorly, who keeps which key, who has been ill, who is worried about a marriage arrangement, and who spends an unreasonable amount of time blaming the draft for noises clearly made by the dog. The dog, hearing no accusation aloud, continues sleeping. At the far end of the room, another servant brings in a small cradle. It belongs to no one sleeping here tonight, but its presence reminds you that children often remain close to women's domestic spaces. Infants may sleep near mothers, nurses, or attendants. Older children can share rooms or occupy nearby chambers, depending on age and rank. Childhood does not always mean a separate bedroom, nor does adulthood. Shared sleeping is ordinary throughout society. Poor families may share one room. Travelers share beds at inns. Servants sleep in halls, kitchens, galleries, or wherever the household can fit them. Even beds themselves may be shared. A bed is expensive. Warmth is valuable. Modern discomfort about sharing sleeping space would seem wasteful to many people here. The lady stands briefly and crosses toward a chest. She checks the key herself. Locked. Satisfied, she returns to the bed. Security is another reason trusted attendants remain nearby. Jewelry letters, clothing money, household accounts, and personal possessions can be stored in chambers. A sleeping room is therefore also a Treasury Office wardrobe and sometimes informal council chamber. The iron-bound coffer beneath the wall may contain enough value to tempt dishonesty. So presence becomes protection. Some swear that servants sleeping nearest a noble woman are chosen as carefully for loyalty as for skill. Others claim family ties matter more. Even now, it is hard to tell whether loyalty is produced by affection, wages, fear, patronage, or a complicated mixture of all four. Probably all four. The candle burns lower. The attendant on the pallet loosens her hair. She uses a simpler comb than the ladies, then ties it back. Rank continues even in grooming. Her blanket is thinner. Her palette is harder. Her candle does not belong to her. Yet she shares the same winter wind outside the shutters. The same bell reaches both women. The same smoke settles in their clothing. The same darkness waits beyond the door. For a brief moment, the great ladder of medieval society feels compressed inside one room. The lady climbs beneath the blankets. The bed curtains remain partly open. The older attendant tucks the fur covering around her shoulders. The younger woman settles onto her pallet. Another servant withdraws into the adjoining chamber, leaving the door slightly open. You expect silence. Instead, a whisper begins. A question, a quiet reply. Then another voice joins. Night does not immediately erase conversation. In fact, once the formalities of the hall disappear and the candles grow low, the chamber may become one of the few places where women speak with less ceremony. The lady turns onto one side. The attendant near the hearth looks up. A remark passes between them. Someone suppresses a laugh. The private world of the castle has not yet gone to sleep. Behind the half-drawn curtains, conversation is beginning. The whisper behind the half-drawn curtains is almost too soft to catch. You hear the lady answer first, her voice quieter than it was in the hall, stripped of ceremony now that the doors are closed and the candles are low. The younger attendant on the pallet raises herself onto one elbow. Near the hearth, the older woman keeps her hands folded over her lap and listens with the calm patience of someone who has heard many nights end this way. The subject is ordinary. A cousin may be arriving before the next feast day. A steward has complained about missing sacks of oats. One of the kitchen servants is convinced a hen has begun laying eggs in the wrong loft. None of these matters would interest a royal chronicler, yet they form the true fabric of castle life. Great events may be recorded in ink, but most evenings are shaped by smaller concerns. Food stores, clothing, repairs, marriages, illnesses, debts, visitors, servants' weather, and whether the roof above the west chamber is still leaking. The lady asks about a young woman in the household. There has been talk of a possible marriage. That word changes the tone. Marriage among noble families can involve affection, but it also involves property alliances, inheritance, guardianship, reputation, and negotiation. A daughter's future may be discussed by relatives long before she has any chance to consider what she wants herself. The younger attendant says something cautious. The older woman replies more carefully still. You sense that everyone knows more than anyone wishes to say plainly. Some marriages are warm, some are practical, some are unhappy, and some begin with two families exchanging more letters than the couple ever will. No one can quite agree whether the young woman in question favors the proposed match. Perhaps she has smiled at the idea. Perhaps she has merely learned that smiling is sometimes safer than offering an opinion too soon. The lady turns slightly beneath the blankets. Her voice becomes gentler. She asks whether the girl has been sleeping well. That question belongs less to politics than to concern. In a household where young noble women may be fostered away from their birth families, female companionship matters. Older women teach manners, household management, devotion, sewing, and the subtle rules of rank. They may also offer advice about marriage and motherhood, though the usefulness of that advice depends greatly on the advisor. A second topic replaces the first. A servant has received a letter from her sister in a market town. The letter mentions rising grain prices. Winter stores are being watched closely. You remember the keys, the locked coffers, the measured firewood, and the careful handling of bread after supper. Even in a castle, abundance is never taken entirely for granted. A poor harvest can tighten every household. Roads can become impassable. Rivers flood. Snow delays carts. Merchants charge more when supplies are scarce. The lady asks whether the winter storehouse has been checked. The older attendant confirms that it has. Smoked fish remains. Salted meat remains. Onions, peas, beans, and grain are counted. Ale is still plentiful. The younger attendant laughs into her blanket. The lady hushes her, but she is smiling too. The conversation wanders again. A pilgrim passed through the village 2 days ago, carrying badges from a distant shrine. He claimed that a spring there cures weak eyesight. One servant wants to visit. Another thinks the pilgrim looked suspiciously capable of selling the same miracle twice. Some swear that water taken from certain holy wells heals specific ailments. Others believe the power comes through the saint associated with the place. Even now it is hard to tell whether a particular story begins as devotion, hope, rumor, or excellent marketing. The older attendant tells of a woman who once tied a small charm beneath her bed to prevent nightmares. The lady asks whether it worked. Apparently, the woman stopped complaining. No one knows whether the dreams vanished or she simply became embarrassed. A faint laugh moves through the room. The candle beside the bed is now shorter than your thumb. Its flame bends whenever a draught finds the room. A story is told about a neighboring manor where a maid heard footsteps every night in an empty gallery. She insisted they belonged to a dead former steward. The older attendant says the gallery floorboards expand near the chimney. The younger woman prefers the ghost. The lady remains undecided. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the footsteps continued after the floor was repaired. You notice how naturally such stories live beside prayers and practical household knowledge. A woman who knows how to inventory linen, prepare a salve, supervise servants, and calculate stores may still prefer not to sleep near a doorway rumored to be haunted. Reason has limits, especially after midnight. Another bell sounds far away. The room quiets briefly. Someone estimates the hour. Without mechanical clocks in every chamber, bells, candles, routine, and bodily habit help measure the night. A half-burned candle can become its own rough clock, though draughts and uneven wax make it unreliable. The lady asks one final question. Has word come from the road? The answer is no. No one expresses alarm. Winter roads are slow. Mud traps, carts, bridges wash out, horses tire. Travellers take shelter at monasteries, inns, manor houses, or roadside hospices when darkness overtakes them. Still, the silence after the answer lasts longer than the others. You remember the broken cartwheel from your own journey and the black road outside the gate. The lady eventually murmurs that the messenger will likely arrive tomorrow. The older attendant agrees, whether either truly believes this is unclear. The conversation thins. Words become shorter. The younger servant settles back onto her pallet. The lady's eyes close, then open once more. Her fears, duties, gossip, family concerns, and small household calculations have all passed through the room and begun to lose their sharp edges. The castle around you feels quieter now, yet before sleep can fully claim the chamber, one last set of precautions remains. The older attendant rises. She takes the ring of iron keys. Then she walks toward the door. The older attendant carries the ring of iron keys toward the door, and every step seems louder now that the conversation has faded. You hear metal touch metal, a small cold chime. The sound belongs to locks, chests, storerooms, and the quiet authority of whoever is trusted to secure them. She tests the chamber door first. The oak is thick, reinforced with iron straps, darkened by age. The latch settles firmly into place, but she does not stop there. She slides a wooden bar across the inside brackets and presses once against the door with her shoulder. It holds. There is something reassuring about the weight of it. Outside lies the corridor, beyond that stairs, beyond those halls, courtyards, kitchens, gates, walls, and finally, the darkness of the countryside. The lady watches from the bed. This routine is ordinary enough that no one comments on it. Night means securing things. Doors are barred. Chests are locked. Fires are checked. Candles are moved away from cloth. Shutters are fastened. Valuables are counted. A medieval castle may have towers, walls, armed guards, and a gate strong enough to discourage an army, but most nighttime worries are much smaller. A thief, a careless servant, a stray spark, a forgotten latch, a loose shutter, a rumour, a visitor who should not be visiting. The attendant turns towards the iron-bound coffer. She checks that lock as well. The lady's jewellery rests inside along with whatever coins, letters, seals, or treasured objects have been placed there for safekeeping. Keys remain close to the bed. Control of them matters. A key may represent access not only to wealth but also to information. A locked chest can contain correspondence. A cupboard can hold medicine. A storeroom can contain food during winter. A strongbox may protect family documents. The person carrying the keys, therefore, knows where many of the household's vulnerabilities are hidden. Some swear that sleeping with a key beneath the pillow discourages thieves. Others claim iron itself offers protection against certain supernatural dangers. Iron horseshoes, nails, knives, and other objects appear in folk beliefs across different places and periods, sometimes associated with warding off troublesome forces. No one can quite agree when a practical object becomes a charm. The older attendant certainly seems interested only in whether the lock works. She gives it one final pull, satisfied. Now she moves toward the hearth. This check is even more important. Fire can kill more efficiently than any imaginary spirit wandering the corridor. The log added earlier has burned down. Red coals glow beneath a thin layer of ash. The servant uses the poker to separate them, slightly reducing the flame. She examines the floor for stray embers. Nothing. The rushes lie safely beyond the hearthstones. A jug of water remains nearby. Every household understands the danger. Timber beams, wooden floors, tapestries, curtains, straw-filled mattresses stored fuel, and open flames are not an ideal combination. Castles may be stone on the outside, but plenty inside can burn. You look at the bed curtains. The candle beside them suddenly seems much more threatening. The attendant thinks so too. She moves it farther away. The younger servant on the pallet watches with sleepy eyes. Her job may include waking if the fire behaves strangely. A night servant does not merely occupy space. She becomes part guard, part nurse, part messenger, and part unwilling listener to every creak the building produces. From somewhere in the corridor comes a faint scrape. Everyone stops. You stop too. The dog lifts his head. Another scrape. Then silence. The older attendant listens at the door. No one speaks. The lady sits slightly higher against the pillows. The dog rises. For 3 long breaths the chamber holds completely still. Then comes the unmistakable sound of claws against stone. A second dog trots past outside. Your dog lowers himself again with an expression suggesting that he knew this all along. The younger servant smiles. The tension disappears. But nighttime fear is rarely far away. Castle corridors are dark, stories collect in them. Servants tell of footsteps after everyone has retired, of doors opening without hands, of lights seen near old towers, of voices beneath floors, of dead relatives returning before misfortune. Some swear that certain nights make such things more likely. Others blame mice. Mice are responsible for a remarkable amount of medieval, supernatural activity. Still, spiritual anxiety is real. People fear demons, harmful magic, sudden death, and the possibility of dying without proper preparation. The lady reaches towards the small cross beside her bed. Her fingers rest against it briefly. A prayer has already been said, but another never hurts. The older attendant checks the shutter bar. Wind presses hard against the wood. It groans. She tightens the fastening. A cloth stuffed earlier into the gap shifts loose, and she pushes it back with 2 fingers. Cold air diminishes. The winter night remains outside, mostly. Another concern is scandal. A noblewoman's reputation can carry political and family consequences. Who enters her chamber when they enter, and who witnesses it may matter enormously. Thus, private doors are not merely about protection from thieves. They also protect reputation. Trusted women sleeping nearby provide witnesses as much as assistants. A suspicious midnight visitor would need to pass guard servants' doors, and enough gossip to destroy 3 generations of dignity before breakfast. Courtly romance sounds simpler when sung. Actual logistics are exhausting. The attendant returns to the bed. She places the keys on a small table within easy reach. A knife may also lie nearby, more as a useful household object than a dramatic weapon. Though nobody objects to having something sharp close at hand, the candle is trimmed again, its flame shrinks, the chamber darkens at the corners. Outside, a watchman calls from the wall. His voice drifts faintly through stone and shutter. Another man answers, farther away. The castle is being watched. You imagine them walking beneath the cold sky with cloaks pulled tight, checking gates and listening towards the road. Inside, the women rely on barriers closer to hand, iron keys, oak doors, wooden bars, prayer, habit, trust, and perhaps one stubborn dog. The older attendant settles once more near the hearth. The younger servant pulls her blanket to her chin. The lady sinks deeper into the bed. For several minutes no one moves. Then a violent gust rattles the shutters. Cold leaks around the edges. The fire trembles. The lady pulls the fur covering closer around her shoulders. The winter night has found another way to remind everyone that stone walls do not guarantee warmth, and the long cold hours are only beginning. The gust against the shutters does not stop. It leans into the chamber as though winter itself has climbed the outer wall and discovered the weakest crack. The wooden panels shudder, the candle flame bows, and the narrow ribbon of cold air near the floor becomes sharper. You feel it around your ankles first, then your hands, then the tip of your nose. The lady pulls the fur covering higher. Across the room, the younger attendant curls more tightly beneath her wool blanket. The dog rises from the hearth, turns in a slow circle, and lies down again, with his back pressed toward the remaining warmth. Nobody needs to announce that the temperature has fallen. You can see it in everyone. The chamber is made of stone, and stone remembers winter. Even after hours of fire, the walls remain cold. Hangings, rushes, shutters, curtains, and bodies help, but this is still a cold room where people negotiate temporary pockets of warmth. The attendant stands. She checks the fire. There is fuel for the night, though not enough to waste. She pushes another small log into the embers and watches until one small flame curls around it. The room brightens. Warmth follows more slowly. Near the bed she touches the wrapped stone that had earlier been used beneath the covers. Already cooling, a second stone rests near the hearth. It is wrapped in thick cloth before being carried to the bed because heated stone pressed directly against skin is a cure for cold only in the same sense that falling into a bonfire is. The attendant slides it beneath the blankets. The lady shifts her feet toward it. You hear a small sigh of relief. Heated stones or bricks provide comfort where warming the whole chamber is impractical. Their heat fades, but for a while they create an island beneath the covers. The bed curtains are drawn farther closed, trapping body heat and shielding the lady from drafts. The great bed is more than decoration. It becomes a room within a room. You remain outside it, where the cold seems much less impressed by rank. The younger servant pulls on an extra garment without rising fully from her pallet. She slips her arms into a wool layer and covers her head with a linen cap. People may sleep in clothing during severe weather, caps, stockings, wool garments, blankets, and shared beds all become practical defences. Fashion loses some authority when frost begins forming near the shutters. You glance towards the window. A pale crust has appeared around one edge. Her knuckles are rough and reddened. Cold weather means cracked skin and stiff fingers. Salves of fat wax oil or herbs may soften damaged skin, though no ointment persuades February that it has gone too far. Some swear that rubbing hands with goose fat protects them from winter cracking. Others favour beeswax preparations or herbal salves. No one can quite agree which remedy is best, but nearly everyone agrees that warm gloves would be preferable if the work allowed them. The lady speaks softly from behind the curtain. The attendant brings another wool blanket. It is heavy, not soft in the way you might imagine from a modern bed, but dense enough to matter. She spreads it over the existing layers. Beneath these coverings the lady wears linen close to the body and may retain additional clothing for warmth. Fur, when available, adds insulation. Squirrel, rabbit, lamb, and more expensive furs appear in garments and household textiles according to rank and wealth. Outside the bed, the servant has less. Her pallet sits closer to the hearth, partly because she needs the heat and partly because she must tend it. Rank remains visible even while everyone shares the same winter. A faint whistle begins near the shutter. The older attendant looks toward it. The younger servant looks toward it. You look toward it. Nobody wants to get up. The whistle continues. At last, the older woman mutters something and crosses the room. She finds another narrow gap, where the wooden shutter does not meet the stone cleanly. More folded cloth is pushed into it. The sound stops. Medieval winter is conquered one draught at a time. From outside comes the distant cry of the watch. The guard's voice comes thinly over frozen air. You imagine frost on the parapet, torches fighting wind and breath hanging in clouds. The fire cracks. A spark jumps and dies safely on the hearthstone. The dog stretches one paw toward the heat. Someone has placed dried herbs beneath part of the bedding, and as the room warms slightly, a faint scent rises. Lavender, perhaps. Some swear that certain herbs encourage restful sleep or keep troublesome spirits away. Others hope merely to discourage insects. Winter itself probably accomplishes more against fleas than the herbs do one of the season's few acts of generosity. The lady shifts again. The heated stone has begun doing its work. Her breathing slows. The attendant on the pallet rests her head against the folded cloak. Still, nobody sinks entirely into sleep. A castle at night speaks constantly. Timbers contract, wind moves through chimneys, a shutter knocks somewhere far down the passage, a bucket scrapes across stone, an animal stirs in the courtyard. You begin to understand how legends grow in winter. A hallway groans, someone hears it half asleep, and by morning a dead night has frightened a scullion. Those who tell the tale never fully agree about which night. The fire. drops again. This time the attendant leaves it alone. Too much fuel now means less by morning. The chamber settles into its cold equilibrium. Blankets hold what warmth they can. Curtains hang still. The frost stays at the window. The half-burned candle has become shorter again. You draw your own cloak tighter and listen to the winter wind move around the tower. Then the lady shifts suddenly behind the curtains. A whispered breath, a pause, another turn beneath the blankets. The attendant raises her head. The room waits. Perhaps the cold is keeping her awake. Perhaps an old ache has returned. Perhaps the stories whispered earlier have followed her into the darkness. Whatever the reason, sleep does not come easily, and the night still deep beyond the shutters has many hours left. The lady turns again beneath the blankets. The bed curtains rustle softly. You hear the older attendant lift her head from beside the hearth, though she does not speak at once. There is a practiced patience in the room now, the patience of people who know that sleep cannot be commanded simply because the hour is late. The lady sighs. A moment passes, then another. At last she murmurs that she is still awake. The attendant rises. No one seems surprised. Sleeplessness belongs to the medieval night as naturally as cold stone and guttering candles. A body can be tired while the mind remains busy. Worries about family, childbirth, illness, absent travellers, household accounts, marriage arrangements, or tomorrow's obligations can follow a woman beneath the blankets and settle beside her more stubbornly than any flea. You move closer to the hearth. The embers glow low. The attendant pours a little water into a small cup and warms it near the fire. Into it she adds a pinch of dried herbs from the chest opened earlier, perhaps chamomile, perhaps lavender, perhaps something else recommended by a grandmother, a nun, or a healer whose name nobody remembers. Some swear that certain herbs quiet restless thoughts. Others insist that warm milk, weak ale, or wine mixed with spices helps sleep come more easily. No one can quite agree which remedy works best, especially because people have been falling asleep, eventually, under nearly all of them. The lady drinks. She keeps both hands around the cup afterward, using its warmth more than its medicine. Her eyes remain open. The younger attendant on the pallet whispers that perhaps the wind is responsible. The older woman answers that blaming the wind is a useful tradition because the wind cannot argue. Outside, as though insulted, it strikes the shutters again. The dog raises one ear. You almost laugh. The lady does too faintly. The tension softens. Still, there are other reasons a woman may lie awake. An aching back from long hours sitting upright, a headache from smoke, painful joints in winter, a troublesome tooth, a pregnancy that makes every sleeping position uncomfortable, menstrual cramps, a child crying in another chamber. The private routines of women are shaped by bodies that chronicles rarely bother to describe. Yet these discomforts are managed every night through experience. The attendant asks where the pain is. The lady touches one hip. A folded blanket is adjusted beneath her. The heated stone, now merely warm, is moved closer. Sometimes simple changes matter more than elaborate remedies. A different pillow, a warmed cloth, a drink, a loosened braid, a prayer, a familiar voice. The candle burns lower, the younger servant lies back down. Then comes a sound from the passage. 3 light knocks. Everyone freezes. The older attendant turns toward the barred door. The knocks come again, not loud, not urgent. The dog stands. This time he does not immediately relax. The attendant crosses the room and asks who is there. A woman answers from outside. It is another servant. The bar is lifted only after her voice is recognized. The door opens a narrow distance. Cold air slips in. The messenger whispers that a child in a nearby chamber has woken, frightened from a dream. His nurse asks whether the lady wishes to be told now or in the morning. The lady sits up. Now. The servant explains that the child dreamed of a black bird striking the window. That is enough to produce several expressions at once. The younger attendant looks worried. The older woman looks unimpressed. Dreams matter in medieval thought. Some are dismissed as products of food illness or imagination. Others are interpreted as warnings. Religious writers may caution against trusting dreams too much, while popular belief remains fascinated by them. A dream of birds, blood waterfalling, storms, or dead relatives can acquire meaning depending on who is telling the story. Some swear that nightmares come from sleeping badly after heavy food, others blame spiritual disturbance. Even now it is hard to tell whether anyone truly believes the dream is an omen or simply fears being the person who ignored one. The lady instructs the servant to tell the nurse to comfort the child and say prayers with him. No alarm, no prophecy, no awakening half the castle. The door closes. The bar returns to place. The older attendant mutters that children dream strange things after sweet cakes. This explanation satisfies her completely. The lady lies down again. You notice that she touches the small cross near the bed before closing her eyes. Perhaps the dream has unsettled her anyway. The room grows quiet. Then another fear emerges, not from the corridor, from memory. The younger servant whispers that her grandmother taught her never to sleep with shoes upside down because it invites bad luck. The older attendant asks why shoes would possess that authority. The girl cannot explain. She only knows that her grandmother believed it. This is how many customs survive, not through books, through repetition. A warning spoken beside a hearth becomes a rule. A rule becomes habit. A habit becomes something nobody dares test after midnight. The servant reaches toward her shoes. Both are upright. She relaxes. The older woman sighs. You suspect she will check her own shoes later when nobody is looking. The lady's breathing grows slower. Then she jerks awake. A bad dream already. Or perhaps only the sensation of falling that sometimes catches a sleeper between waking and sleep. The attendant approaches. The lady says she thought someone called her name. No one did. The older woman checks the corridor anyway. Nothing. The castle beyond the door is nearly silent. Such moments can become frightening in darkness. Half-sleep blurs sound and imagination. A creak becomes a footstep. Wind becomes whispering. Shadows become figures. Some people keep protective prayers near the bed. Others place a blessed object close to the pillow. Some may use folk charms that church authorities would regard with suspicion. The distinction can become hazy at 2 in the morning. The lady asks for the devotional book, not to read, only to place it nearer. The attendant does so. The book rests beside the cross and prayer beads. The lady closes her eyes again. The room seems to accept the decision. No more stories. No more discussion. Only the fire, the candle, the wind. You listen to the soft rhythm of breathing gradually becoming even. The younger servant sleeps first, then the dog. The older attendant remains awake longest. Her silhouette sits near the dying embers, shoulders wrapped in wool, watching the room with heavy eyes. At last, even she lowers her head. You remain still. Beyond the shutters, the deepest part of night has arrived. The castle is nearly silent now, but not entirely. Somewhere below, someone is still awake. Someone is walking. Someone is guarding the gate. Someone is tending a fire. Someone is praying. And soon you will follow those faint signs of life into the sleeping castle itself. The castle is nearly silent now. You leave the warmth of the chamber as carefully as you can, easing through the oak door after the older attendant lifts the bar just far enough to let you pass. Behind you, the lady sleeps beneath heavy blankets, the younger servant curled on her pallet, the dog finally surrendered to dreams beside the hearth. The door closes again. At once the corridor feels colder. Your breath hangs faintly before you. A single lamp burns in a wall, niche its flame, small and stubborn. Beyond its circle of light, the passage disappears into shadow. Worn stones beneath your feet slope slightly toward the stair polished by generations of servants, guards, children, priests, messengers, and women carrying candles through nights exactly like this one. You descend. The castle changes when almost everyone sleeps. During daylight, corridors belong to footsteps and commands. Kitchens hiss, doors slam, servants call to one another. Horses stamp below. Now each sound stands alone. A timber creaks overhead. You stop. Nothing follows. You continue downward. At the turn of the stair, you find a maid carrying a covered lantern and an empty pitcher. She looks exhausted. Her hair is hidden beneath a simple linen covering, and she walks with the careful stiffness of someone whose feet began hurting several hours ago. She is returning from fetching water. Even at this hour, work continues. Someone may wake thirsty. Someone may become ill. A fire may need water nearby. The routines supporting sleep do not sleep themselves. She passes you with a brief nod. The lantern vanishes around the corner. below the great hall is almost unrecognizable. The benches are empty. The tables have been cleared. Only a low fire remains at the hearth, glowing beneath carefully banked ash. A servant asleep near the wall has pulled his cloak over his face. The rushes smell of smoke and yesterday's meal. Near the hearth, the same persistent dog from earlier has somehow acquired a companion. Apparently, medieval security has subcontracted part of the night watch to creatures primarily interested in bones. You cross toward the kitchen. The doorway is open. Inside, the great cooking fire has been reduced to embers. Pots hang black above it. A wooden spoon rests beside a bowl. Loaves for morning sit beneath cloth. One kitchen servant is awake. She checks a pot of soaked peas that will become part of tomorrow's pottage. Food preparation follows rhythms longer than individual meals. Grain soaks, dough rises, meat salts, fish dries, ale ferments. A medieval kitchen never truly begins or ends. It merely becomes quieter. The servant notices you and points toward a small stool near the wall. On it lies a piece of coarse bread left from supper. You take it. It is hard at the edges. Still, at this hour it tastes surprisingly good. A little ale waits in a jug. You drink carefully. Water is certainly consumed in medieval life, despite popular claims otherwise, but ale is common and provides both drink and nourishment. You return the cup. The servant resumes her work. Somewhere beneath the kitchen floor, a mouse scratches. She looks downward. You look downward. Nothing appears. Some swear that mice grow especially bold during winter because cold drives them indoors. Others might claim they predict coming weather by appearing in unusual numbers. The kitchen servant merely mutters that they predict nothing except missing grain. You leave her to this practical philosophy. A narrow passage takes you toward the chapel. Here the air smells different, less of food, more of wax, stone, and faint incense. One lamp burns before an image of the Virgin. A priest or chaplain sits asleep on a bench, head tilted awkwardly against the wall. Perhaps he intended to remain awake in prayer. Perhaps prayer unexpectedly became extremely restful. You pass quietly. Near the altar rests a small reliquary. You remember the one in the lady's chamber. This one is larger, perhaps containing some fragment associated with a local saint. No one can quite agree whether the relic is truly what tradition claims. Some swear that it was brought from a distant monastery generations ago. Others suggest that its history became much more impressive each time someone retold it. Still, candles burn before it. Faith does not always require certainty. Outside the chapel, another stair leads towards the wall. The air becomes colder with every step. You emerge briefly onto a covered section of the battlements. Night opens around you. The river below is only a dark ribbon beneath frost. Fields stretch toward the forest. No lamps mark the muddy roads now. In the distance, monastery windows show a few tiny points of yellow. Then a bell begins, slow, measured. Its sound crosses the valley and reaches the castle wall a heartbeat later. A watchman nearby pauses to listen. He wears a thick wool cloak and holds a lantern protected by horn panels. His face looks red from the cold. He continues along the wall, checking shadows beyond the gate. Another guard answers from the opposite tower. These calls reassure everyone inside that someone remains awake. They also reassure the watchmen that they themselves have not been forgotten. You stand near the parapet. Your hands quickly grow numb. The wind moves through every fold of your cloak. Below the gatehouse is dark except for one lamp. A horse shifts in the stable. Farther away, an owl calls once from the trees. Some people consider owls unlucky. Others associate certain night birds with death or warning. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. Tonight it sounds merely lonely. You go back inside. Warmth does not greet you so much as the absence of wind, which suddenly feels luxurious. Passing through another corridor, you glimpse servants sleeping on pallets close to the walls. One has wrapped herself entirely in a blanket. Another sleeps beside a wooden chest she is apparently responsible for guarding. A boy near the kitchen door snores loudly enough to threaten the castle's defensive reputation. No one wakes him. You continue upstairs. The half-burned candle from earlier still survives in its niche. It is now little more than a pool of wax around a short wick. The smell of wet wool remains faintly in the passage, so does wood smoke. Everything you have encountered through the night seems gathered in those two scents: work, cold, fire, bodies, stone. You reach the lady's door. Inside there is no conversation now, only sleeping breaths, a faint movement of blankets, the soft crack of embers. For the first time since dusk, the entire household seems suspended, yet the darkness outside the shutters has begun to change. Not light exactly, something thinner, a softness along the horizon that the watchmen notice before anyone else. Soon the bells will sound again. Soon fires will be stirred. Soon servants will rise. Soon hair will be combed, linen fastened, keys gathered, and the private world of night folded away. But for one last little while the castle remains held in darkness. You listen. And somewhere beyond the walls, just before dawn, the first bell begins to move through the cold air. The first bell reaches the castle before the light does. It rolls across the frozen fields, touches the outer walls, and enters the upper chambers as a low vibration more felt than heard. You are still beside the lady's door when the sound fades, leaving behind a silence that no longer belongs entirely to night. Inside, someone stirs. The bar lifts. The older attendant appears with her cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her eyes are tired, but she is already working. She glances toward the narrow window at the end of the corridor. The sky beyond it is grey. Not morning yet, but close. You follow her back inside. The chamber has changed while you were away. The fire is nearly dead. The heated stone beneath the blankets has gone cold. Frost Still marks the shutter edges, and the air carries that peculiar pre-dawn chill that seems sharper than midnight. The lady wakes slowly and pulls the blanket over her face. For one quiet moment, rank etiquette and household authority disappear beneath wool. The younger attendant hears the bell and groans. Medieval mornings apparently begin with the same enthusiasm as modern ones. The older woman stirs the hearth. Ash shifts, a faint red glow appears, and she adds kindling until a small flame catches. Soon the chamber fills again with the familiar smell of smoke and warming wood. The lady sits upright. Her braid has loosened during the night. Before anything else, she reaches toward the little cross beside the bed and speaks a short prayer. Waking safely is reason enough for gratitude. Some swear that the first words spoken after waking should be holy words rather than ordinary complaints. The younger attendant looks towards the cold floor and seems to reconsider this tradition. A servant enters carrying water. The basin returns. So does the linen cloth. The private rituals of night begin reversing themselves. The lady washes her face and hands. Fresh linen is brought from a chest. Outer garments wait folded where they were placed the night before. Keys are gathered from the bedside table, their familiar metallic sound reminding you that authority is waking too. The chamber pot is removed discreetly. Bed curtains are opened to air the mattress. Blankets are shaken. The room that protected sleep becomes a working room again. You notice the younger servant checking her shoes. Both are still upright. Apparently, her grandmother's warning survived the night successfully. No one can quite agree whether such small superstitions endure because people truly fear bad luck or because habit feels comforting when the world outside is uncertain. Beyond the chamber, other doors are opening. Footsteps begin along the passage. A kitchen maid carries an empty basket downstairs. A boy struggles upward with firewood. Somewhere below the stable comes alive with horses shifting in their stalls. Another bell rings, the lady stands. Her attendants begin fastening clothing around her in layers, linen, wool, then heavier garments for rank and weather. The braid from the night is undone and combed. Pins return. A veil is prepared. The private woman of the night slowly becomes the public lady of the morning. A jewel is selected from the coffer. The coffer closes again. The key returns to the ring. Downstairs, bread is uncovered. Pottage returns to the fire, and servants who slept on pallets roll their bedding away because daytime needs the same spaces for work. The castle stretches awake around you. The lady pauses beside the shutter. An attendant opens it slightly. Cold grey light enters. Outside, mist lies over the river. Frost shines along the battlements, and the road that vanished last night has returned as a pale line through the fields. Soon, travellers will use it. Merchants will approach the gates. Farmers will move toward fields. Pilgrims may pass beneath roadside shrines while distant monastery bells continue measuring the morning. The lady turns away from the window. Her veil is settled into place. Her keys hang at her side. Only the tiredness around her eyes suggests how long the darkness felt. You follow her downstairs as the castle fills again with footsteps, smoke bread bells and voices. Behind you, the private world of bed curtains, whispered worries, prayer beads, warm stones and guarded doors closes quietly. The half-burned candle from the night is finally snuffed. For the last time, you smell wet wool, beeswax, smoke and cold stone, together the familiar sense of a night that has folded itself into the ordinary work of mourning. For a little while you remain near the window and let the castle move without you. The mist beyond the walls begins to lift from the river in slow, pale folds. Fields appear one by one beneath the grey morning. A horse crosses the courtyard below its breath, rising like smoke, while a servant carries a basket toward the kitchen and disappears beneath an arch. The locked doors have opened, the whispered stories have ended. The herbs comes prayer beads, keys, blankets, and little protective charms have returned to their places. What seemed mysterious in darkness becomes ordinary in daylight, and perhaps that is the quietest truth of the night you have shared. Life inside these walls is not made only of kings, battles, marriages, and feasts. It is made of cold fingers held near a fire of women, loosening veils after long hours, of servants warming sheets, of whispered worries behind curtains, of prayers spoken because morning is never guaranteed, and of laughter kept low so nobody in the next room hears. You let those small details settle. Even the winter wind has fallen away. You can imagine the chamber above becoming quiet again, in memory the curtain half drawn, the fire reduced to embers, a braid resting over one shoulder, and one stubborn dog asleep where he was told not to sleep. There is nothing more you need to follow tonight. No corridor remains unexplored. No door needs opening. The castle can continue without you now. Let the footsteps fade. Let the bells move farther away. Let the grey morning soften until it becomes only a thin glow behind closed eyes. You are warm. You are still. The old stone walls recede into darkness, and the last candle grows smaller, softer, quieter, until even its flame is gone. End of script. Sweet dreams.